Welcome to International Securities Exchange's podcast series. Facilitated by renowned educators, ISE podcasts are intended to teach beginning as well as seasoned investors the ins and outs of trading. To find an updated list of podcasts, please visit www.ise.com/podcasts. Please be sure to listen to our important message following this episode regarding the risks of investing in exchange-traded options.
So you can use these building blocks to really enhance your performance in terms of where you're timing your entries and your exits. Now going back to look at the USD CAD, what we're seeing here is that the JPY gave us kind of a template for what to look for as resistance levels and as target levels based upon what's going on the Canadian dollar. So the initial resistance zone was where it had that little bit of congestion in that two-wave drop marked A here. And that's what we're seeing hit right now, is we're seeing that A zone hit before that, so that you can see that here on this smaller time frame. So this is that zone. Notice it's right in the middle of that congestion zone. Let me clear this because I want to show you something though. Notice that in this case, it did not stall exactly as the middle of that congestion zone hit, but look at how it formed another level of congestion right at that previous congestion zone, and it went straight through the middle of what that resistance level was. So this is showing you how that is still that same resistance zone at play. It's just because the momentum was so sharp heading into that zone, it was able to push through it a little bit higher. There's another type of support and resistance that I didn't get into as well that's called an equal move or measured move support or resistance. Again, I noticed that a lot of times if a breakout took place at the same momentum as the move heading into a trading range, often it would form an equal move, and that would serve as an initial target zone on that breakout. So that puts an initial target on this right about here. If we go back and look at these larger time frames, we can see where some of these other target levels would be. That initial equal move target zone places it right about in the same level as this previous low here, B, was and served as resistance on the JPY. So that's going to be the next level of resistance to look for. Now, one of the things that we have, it's a little bit different here, is if you look at the USD JPY, notice there's actually three ways of buying off of this low. And as it came into that third high, this is where I talked about earlier that it doesn't necessarily change the trend. It might just fall into a longer congestion and then the trend can resume. So each of these congestion moves was similar on this uptrend on the JPY. And as it came into the high, it just fell into this longer trading range or this longer correction before it broke higher. That took it to the next resistance level, which is the high of that previous level, which places it about 1.2 for the CAD, just a little bit under it. However, the trend development is playing out a little bit differently here, because in B, on the JPY, we were on a third leg higher. Well, we're probably just going to be on a second leg higher on B on the CAD. So this is where things kind of can shift from one pattern to the next, even though you're dealing with the same setup and the same idea and the same concept. But these differences can change how something, turns and plays out a little bit later on. We'll have to kind of watch this and see how the momentum development plays out. This could actually be a good thing for the CAD, that it's made it farther at this point in time than the JPY did, because it might help actually accelerate the uptrend and form a larger, stronger bottom in it. That kind of it has some time here for us to play out, because there was still a very sharp drop in the lows coming on between C, that high on C, to the lows marked here as the start of 2008. And as you recall before, a lot of times the correction off of such a move is going to play out more gradually. So what we're seeing in the USD JPY is that even though it had these very strong upside moves, it held the lows perfectly, if you go and look at that actual change here, that actual shift from that high to the low, you can see that as it's moved higher, it's actually more gradual on the upside. And so it would be, expected to see that same type of overall slower move could play out on the USD CAD as well, or if it's able to maintain the momentum, it could fall into a longer trading range and create more of a sideways type of trading range. So that would be where it could be a little bit different from what we're seeing going on or what we saw happen on the USD JPY. But in either case, the longer-term outlook on this is still going to be to the upside. We're still looking at those larger target levels to hold, and those are going to be what we're kind of aiming for now at this point on this particular position. Let me take a minute here and answer any questions that you guys might have. I want to thank you for making it to today's presentation. I'm also going to be presenting for ISE in November at the Expo in Vegas, where I'll be talking about kind of the longer-term outlook, what we foresee on the U.S. dollar. So for those of you that are going to be in Vegas this fall, I would like to encourage you to stop by and make it to that presentation as well. Let me go through here and see what I have for questions.
Looks like we have a handful of questions, Toni. Someone had asked, what time frame do you look at for swing trades?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As I said earlier at the start of this presentation, when I'm looking at swing trades, I'm primarily looking for the actual setup, like the core price development on a daily time frame. But if I don't have a weekly time frame that's also in my favor, I'm probably going to skip it, or I'm going to drop down and just trade it as maybe like a 1 to 2 day hold, or I'm dropping down and trading it on like a 30-minute chart and just doing it smaller term.
Okay, great. All right, another question that we just received. How can you tell how long a consolidation will last?
Well, that can go into a couple of things. It can go into both momentum and pace as well as trend development. Like I said when we were looking at the three-wave trend development, hopefully you'll remember that. I'll pull that back up here really quick just to kind of give you a visual clue of this.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. To find more podcasts on options, stocks, alternative markets, and market data, please visit www.ise.com/podcasts.